Claire sat on the edge of a hospital bed, with her hands resting on her round belly. Her breathing was slow, but heavy, and the room felt too quiet for her racing thoughts. The clean white walls and the steady beeping machines only made the silence stronger. She tried to smile at the thought of finally meeting her baby, but fear pressed against her chest. She told herself that nothing from the past should touch this day, but memories pushed their way in like uninvited guests. They came with the same sharpness as the pain that rolled through her body years ago she had believed in forever. She had believed in gentle words spoken under the stars by a man who promised to hold her always. That man was Ethan. A doctor, praised by many, and a name many patients trusted. But for Claire, he was no longer the man with warm laughter. He was the one who walked away when she needed him most. Their marriage had ended with more silence than shouting, and she had carried the ache long after he left. Now she carried new life and new hope. She wanted this day to be about her and her child, not about old wounds. Claire closed her eyes and whispered a promise to her unborn baby. She promised to protect this child from the storms of the past. Every breath was a fight against the sharp waves of pain, but she pressed her palm against her stomach and held on. The thought of Ethan returning never crossed her mind. She believed their stories had ended long ago, like two books closed on different shelves. She prayed she would never see him walk through those doors in her most fragile hour. But life had a different plan waiting in the shadows. The pain grew sharper as the night moved on. Nurses rushed in and out of the room while Claire gripped the edge of the bed with trembling hands. Her voice was weak but steady when she asked the young nurse for one thing. She wanted a doctor, but she begged that it not be Ethan. The memory of him still stung, and this moment was meant for her and her child only. The nurse nodded with understanding, but the hospital halls were crowded with voices, emergencies, and hurried footsteps. Every room was filled with patients, and every doctor was already fighting to keep lives safe. The storm outside rattled the windows as thunder rolled across the sky. Inside, Claire's body fought harder with each passing moment. The young nurse whispered to another staff member who shook his head. Only one senior doctor was free at that pressing hour. Destiny seemed cruel in its choice. When the door opened, Claire's heart jolted. Ethan stepped in wearing his white coat, his eyes searching the room as if time itself had folded back. He froze for a moment when he saw her. For the first time in years, their eyes locked, not across a courtroom or a cold street, but in a room filled with the raw smell of birth and fear. Claire wanted to turn away, yet she could not move. There was no space for old anger while her baby's heartbeat echoed on the monitor. 1,000 unsaid words thickened the air between them. Ethan cleared his throat, his steady tone hiding something trembling underneath. The nurses looked at him with hope that he could manage what was becoming dangerous. Claire's chest rose and fell with pain and disbelief. Fate had summoned the very man she had sworn to erase, right when she needed someone she could not bear to trust. The room grew heavier as the minutes passed. Claire's cries of pain filled the space, and the young nurses looked at each other with worry. The baby was in trouble, and so was the mother. The monitors beeped faster, and one of the nurses whispered to Ethan that they were losing time. Ethan's hands tightened at his sides, yet his face showed calm strength. Inside him, past and present battled fiercely. He had once promised to protect this woman, and though their marriage had ended in silence, those words still lived in him like an unfinished vow. He stepped closer to the bed, and for a moment the sounds of the room seemed to fade. Claire turned her head toward him, her eyes filled with both fear and hurt. She did not want to need him, yet her body was breaking under the strain. Ethan bent over and spoke in a low voice that only she could hear. He told her to trust him once more. His words carried no pride, no cold distance, but a quiet urgency. "I will not lose you again," he said. The pain in his tone was as clear as the pain in her contractions. Those words struck deeper than the sharpest contraction. Claire felt a flood of memories, but also something new. She saw not only the man who had left her, but also the man who might fight for her now. Ethan moved with steady focus as he directed the staff, breaking from usual routine and taking bold steps that shocked the others. He treated her as more than a patient. He was guarding his family. Every choice, every order came with the weight of love hidden behind years of regret. The unthinkable act was not only in medicine but in his heart opening again. The long night stretched on as the storm raged outside. Inside the room, the battle for life reached its hardest moment. Claire clutched the sheets so tight her knuckles turned white. Sweat rolled down her face, her strength almost gone. The nurses scrambled to keep up, but their eyes kept falling to Ethan, waiting for his next command. His voice was firm, his hands steady, yet in his chest there was a storm louder than the thunder beyond the walls. He was not just saving a mother and child, he was saving the only woman he had ever truly loved. Time felt held in a fragile balance. Finally, after hours of fear and struggle, a piercing cry broke through the heavy air. The baby's first breath filled the room with a sound that washed away the shadows of dread. Claire's tears flowed freely, not from pain this time, but from a relief so deep it left her trembling. Ethan stood still for a heartbeat, the force of the moment breaking the barrier he had built for years. He gently placed the tiny newborn in Claire's arms, and for the first time since their love had fallen apart, they shared a silence that was not bitter but tender. Claire looked down at the child, then back up at Ethan. His eyes were different than the cold distance she remembered. They were tired, yes, but also filled with remorse and a softness she never thought she would see again. She realized that when everything seemed lost, he had given more than duty. He had given his heart with each decision, with each risk. With every word he spoke when she needed it most, the baby's cries softened into peaceful whimpers, and Claire felt her chest swell with something she had thought gone forever. The thread between her and Ethan had not been cut by divorce or years apart. It had only been twisted, waiting for a moment like this to reveal it still existed. Ethan remained by her side, not out of routine but because he could not move away. They were still bound, tied by more than the child asleep in her arms. They were tied by a soul string that had only been pulled tighter through pain, regret, and now renewal. The storm had faded by the time the new day arrived. Sunlight pushed through the blinds in soft streaks across the room, painting warmth over the bed where Claire rested with her newborn. The air no longer carried panic, but carried the light hum of peace. Claire held her daughter close against her chest, her eyes fixed on the small face, breathing gently in sleep. For a long moment she forgot the world outside. It was just her and the baby, bound together by something stronger than all the struggles that had led to this morning. Yet when she turned her head, she saw Ethan still there, sitting quietly. His coat folded over a chair. He looked nothing like the man who had left her years ago. His shoulders seemed heavier, as if carrying the weight of all the mistakes he could never erase. But there was a softness in him now, a gentleness that showed through his silence. Claire studied him carefully, unsure if her heart could trust what her eyes were seeing. She had held anger for so long that letting it go almost felt dangerous. But when she remembered his hand guiding her through the worst hours of the night, when she remembered his words promising he would not lose her again, she felt something deep inside her begin to shift. Ethan met her gaze, and for the first time, he did not look like a stranger from her past. He looked like the man who had once promised the world to her, and who, in the most fragile moment of her life, had stood firmly beside her. No apology could fix their years apart, but she realized his actions had spoken louder than any excuse ever could. He had chosen to stay, to save, to risk, and to care in a way that could not be denied. Claire's hand brushed over her baby's small head, and she allowed herself to breathe in calm hope. Life had broken them once, but life had also handed them this child, a bond no separation could erase. The soul string that tied her to Ethan had not snapped. It had stretched, it had ached, but it had survived. As the morning sun rose higher, Claire no longer saw only the ruins of yesterday. She saw the beginning of a tomorrow that waited for all three of them, woven together by love that refused to die.